The 80s weren't just about Freddy, Jason, and Michael. For every blockbuster boogeyman, there were dozens of hidden gems buried deep in dusty VHS rental shops. Some of these flicks never got their moment, overshadowed by bigger franchises and flashier marketing. But here's the kicker. Many of them are creepier, weirder, and more unforgettable than the ones you know by heart. So, are you ready to step into the shadows of the forgotten slashers? Let's dive in. The Prey, 1984. Imagine hiking into the woods for a carefree camping trip, only to realize nature isn't the only thing watching you. The Prey is one of those films that slips under the radar because it doesn't hit you with endless action. It lulls you in with the calm beauty of the forest before twisting that calm into dread. Shot in the late 70s but finally released in the mid-80s, it has this strange, almost documentary feel with long stretches of wildlife footage. That alone sets it apart. The story? A group of teens heads into the wilderness for some downtime, but an outcast figure, disfigured by a fire long ago, lurks among the trees. The pacing might test your patience at first, but that's the trick. By the time things turn sinister, the earlier calmness makes the tension snap like a rubber band stretched too far. The real charm here is atmosphere. The wooded setting feels alive, like the forest itself is complicit in what happens. The killer barely speaks, yet the silence is louder than any dialogue. It's eerie, strange, and hypnotic. And when the suspense finally pays off, it hits harder because you've been lulled into a false sense of safety. Why revisit it now? Because The Prey feels like an experiment in mood as much as a slasher. It's rough, it's strange, but it lingers. For fans tired of predictable beats, this one is like stepping into a dream you can't quite shake. The Slayer, 1982. Here's a movie that plays more like a surreal nightmare than a typical campy slasher. The Slayer takes place on a remote, storm-battered island where two couples head for a vacation that quickly spirals into terror. At first, it feels like your usual isolated friends in danger setup. But then the dreamlike dread creeps in, and suddenly it feels like you're watching someone's subconscious unravel on screen. What makes The Slayer unique is its pacing and tone. The film deliberately avoids flashy mayhem in favor of slow, mounting unease. The protagonist, Kay, is plagued by recurring nightmares that start bleeding into reality. The big question the film teases is whether what's happening is supernatural, or if Kay herself might be behind the horror. That ambiguity gives the story a haunting edge. Released in the early 80s, it came and went with little fanfare, but it carved out a small cult reputation thanks to its eerie vibe. The isolated beach houses, the relentless weather, the feeling of being trapped, everything adds to a mood that's as heavy as it is hypnotic. If you're used to flashy sequels from this era, The Slayer might feel slow, but its atmosphere makes up for that tenfold. The ending, without spoiling, is a gut punch, bleak, strange, and unforgettable. This isn't popcorn entertainment. It's the kind of film that worms into your head and lingers long after. A moody, underseen gem worth rediscovering. Final Exam, 1981. Now let's talk about a movie that dared to strip the formula down to its bare bones. Final Exam doesn't even bother giving you a masked man with an elaborate backstory. Instead, you get a nameless figure who suddenly appears on a college campus and begins picking people off. No motive, no theatrics, just raw, unsettling randomness. This simplicity divided audiences. Some dismissed it as cheap, while others saw it as chilling in a way most slashers weren't. After all, isn't the idea of being targeted for no reason scarier than any campfire legend? The lack of explanation makes the danger feel that much more unpredictable. Filmed on a small budget, Final Exam leans heavily on its campus setting, milking every shadowy hallway, stairwell, and locker room for tension. The college vibe feels authentic, like you're really walking through empty buildings after class hours. It doesn't rely on gore so much as creeping suspense, building toward set pieces that keep you guessing. One of the standout features is its refusal to glamorize the horror. The killer isn't a wisecracker or a supernatural force. He's just there, unstoppable, silent. And in some ways, that's the most unnerving approach of all. If you've only seen the big names, this one might feel almost too stripped down at first glance. But give it a chance, and you'll see why some horror fans consider it one of the most underrated slashers of its time. Blood Rage, 1987. Every holiday deserves its horror movie, and Thanksgiving finally got its cult classic with Blood Rage. At its core, it's a story about twin brothers, one wrongfully locked away in an institution, the other free to wreak havoc while everyone assumes he's the innocent one. Already you've got the makings of twisted family drama, but what really sells it is the unapologetic excess of the 80s. Filmed earlier in the decade but shelved until the late 80s, Blood Rage leans into outrageousness with gusto. There's a suburban backdrop, a dinner table atmosphere, and then chaos breaks loose. The film doesn't try to be subtle. It's loud, brash, and drenched in the neon weirdness of the decade. What keeps it memorable isn't just the premise of mistaken identity, but the way it mixes dark comedy with shocking set pieces. 1 minute you're laughing at over-the-top dialogue, the next you're caught off guard by its intensity. It's the kind of movie that swings so hard between tones that you can't help but get pulled along. For years, Blood Rage was almost impossible to find, but with modern re-releases, it's gained a well-deserved cult following. Fans of holiday-themed slashers eat this one up because it's both a parody and a genuine attempt at building unease. If you're hunting for something truly offbeat, this is your hidden gem. It's bold, it's messy, and it embodies everything strange and wild about late 80s horror. Madman, 1981. What happens when you mix campfire legends with old-school woods horror? You get Madman. Set at a camp, it opens with a group of counselors telling the tale of a local figure named Madman Mars, an axe-wielding brute supposedly still lurking nearby. Of course, someone shouts his name, breaking the cardinal rule of campfire stories, and soon enough, the legend walks into reality. On the surface, it feels like a familiar setup: camp setting, young counselors, isolated cabins. But Madman adds its own flavor. The killer isn't just another masked figure. He's a hulking presence with a folklore backstory, giving the film a creepy, myth-like quality. The woods are shot in a way that makes them feel endless, like you could run forever and still not find a way out. The film also stands out for its gritty atmosphere. It doesn't feel polished, and that actually works in its favor. The rough edges, the odd pacing, and the low-budget charm give it an authenticity that bigger productions often lose. Watching it feels like you've stumbled onto some local urban legend caught on camera. Over time, Madman has built up a loyal following, particularly among fans of camp slashers. While it was overshadowed by the massive success of Friday the 13th, it deserves to sit alongside it as one of the better wilderness horror stories of the decade. If you're craving a creepy tale that feels both familiar and unique, Madman is waiting. Girls' Nite Out, 1982. Okay, let's be real. When you hear slasher in a bear mascot suit, you probably think it's a parody. But Girls' Nite Out is very real, and that's what makes it such a strange little slice of 80s horror history. Set during a scavenger hunt on a college campus, the story takes the usual group of students formula and spices it up with an unexpected costume choice for the stalker, a fuzzy bear mascot with claws. Yeah, it's both silly and unsettling at the same time. This isn't your polished Hollywood production. It's gritty, scrappy, and has the unmistakable vibe of being shot fast and cheap. But that rawness works in its favor. The college setting feels authentic, with dorm rooms, cafeterias, and late-night hangouts captured in all their early 80s glory. There's also an odd charm in how the characters are written. Some are likable, some unbearable, but all of them feel ripped from a real campus in that era. What makes the movie stand out is its tone. It bounces between goofy, borderline comedic moments and genuinely chilling suspense. One minute you're rolling your eyes at frat antics. The next, you're leaning forward as the bear suit looms in the dark. It's this uneven, off-kilter rhythm that keeps you hooked because you're never sure what tone the next scene will hit. Over the years, Girls' Night Out has grown into a cult favorite precisely because of its oddball premise. It's campy, it's weird, but it's got a strange staying power. If you want a slasher that feels like a time capsule of early 80s campus life with a side of surreal absurdity, this is the one to track down. Just Before Dawn, 1981. Some slashers want to shock you with gore. Others, like Just Before Dawn, aim to bury you in atmosphere until you can't breathe. This is one of the most haunting wilderness horror films of the decade, and yet it rarely gets the recognition it deserves. The story follows a group of friends heading into the Oregon mountains for a camping trip. But unlike the many cheap Friday the 13th knockoffs of the era, Just Before Dawn takes its time, building tension with long stretches of quiet unease. You hear birds, the wind, the crunch of boots on dirt trails, and slowly that natural beauty starts to feel suffocating. It's as if the forest itself is plotting against you. The antagonists here are backwoods figures with a primal, unsettling presence. They're not masked icons, they're raw, brutal forces of nature. That grounded approach makes the danger feel uncomfortably real. Add in breathtaking cinematography of misty woods and cascading waterfalls, and you've got a movie that balances beauty and menace in equal measure. What really seals the deal is the climax, which delivers one of the most intense, unexpected showdowns of the era. Without spoiling, let's just say the film gives its protagonist a moment of empowerment that's as shocking as it is satisfying. Just Before Dawn isn't a roller coaster, it's a slow, creeping climb up a mountain that suddenly gives way to a terrifying drop. For fans of slashers that feel more like folk horror fever dreams, this one is essential. The Mutilator, 1984. If you've ever seen a VHS cover that stuck in your brain, chances are The Mutilator was one of them. With the tagline, "By sword, by pick, by axe, bye-bye," this movie made its intentions clear right on the shelf, and while it didn't break into the mainstream, it's carved out a special place among collectors and slasher enthusiasts. The premise is simple but twisted. A college student and his friends head to a beach house, unaware that his troubled father is lurking with deadly intentions. What unfolds is a mix of family trauma and bloody chaos, but with an oddly playful energy woven throughout. It's like the movie can't decide if it wants to be a serious thriller or a campy gore fest, and somehow that indecision becomes part of its charm. The beach house setting gives it a different flavor from the usual forest or campus slashers. Instead of cabins and lakes, you've got boats, fishing gear, and seaside boardwalk vibes, all of which are cleverly worked into the suspense. The kills are creatively staged, pushing the envelope for the era, and the tone swings wildly between goofy camaraderie and grim tension. Part of what makes The Mutilator memorable is how deeply 80s it feels. From the synth-heavy score to the awkward banter, it's like watching a time capsule play out with extra red paint. It's messy, it's uneven, but it's unforgettable. If you're into slashers that don't take themselves too seriously but still deliver wild moments, The Mutilator is a perfect hidden gem. Mountaintop Motel Massacre, 1986. Sometimes the scariest stories aren't about hulking monsters or masked figures, they're about ordinary people pushed to extremes. Mountaintop Motel Massacre is a perfect example, giving us Evelyn, a disturbed motel owner who decides her guests have overstayed their welcome. Set in a rural roadside motel, the film oozes atmosphere from its opening frames. The creaky hallways, flickering lights, and isolated location create an environment where you already feel unsafe before anything happens. But what really sticks out is the underground tunnel system Evelyn uses to sneak into her guests' rooms, turning the motel into a twisted maze of paranoia. Unlike the more supernatural or larger-than-life villains of the era, Evelyn feels unsettlingly human. She's not unstoppable or otherworldly. She's unstable, unpredictable, and disturbingly real. That makes her actions harder to shrug off as simple movie scares. The film was part of the wave of regional horror productions in the 80s, which often had lower budgets but unique voices. Its rough edges add to the atmosphere, giving it that grindhouse flavor. It doesn't follow the familiar slasher formula beat for beat, and that unpredictability is its greatest strength. Over the years, Mountaintop Motel Massacre has built a small but loyal fan base who appreciate its creepy setting and offbeat villain. It may not have the polish of studio slashers, but it has a raw, unshakable mood that lingers long after the credits roll. Deadly Games, 1982. Here's a film that feels like it fell between the cracks, too strange for the mainstream, too underseen for cult status. Deadly Games mixes murder mystery tropes with slasher elements, creating something that plays like a whodunit, drenched in 80s atmosphere. The setup revolves around a small town where young women start disappearing. At first, it feels like a detective thriller, with cops and locals trying to connect the dots. But then, the movie leans into classic slasher vibes, shadowy figures, tense stalking sequences, and a killer who seems to be one step ahead. The twist? The story weaves in a bizarre board game motif, making the whole thing feel like a surreal puzzle. Visually, Deadly Games is moody. It uses shadow and neon in a way that screams early 80s cinema, while the small-town setting makes the danger feel close to home. The characters, from nosy locals to the central heroine, aren't written as disposable stereotypes. They actually feel grounded, which adds weight to the suspense. One of the film's greatest strengths is its unpredictability. Unlike many slashers where you can guess who'll be left standing, Deadly Games keeps you guessing all the way through. The ending won't go down in history as legendary, but it's offbeat enough to leave you thinking about it afterward. This isn't a film for gorehounds, it's more of a moody slow burn that blends genres. But for anyone looking for a slasher with a brainier, more off-kilter edge, Deadly Games is a hidden card worth flipping over. Hell High, 1989. Sometimes a slasher doesn't need an elaborate backstory or supernatural twist, just raw human rage. Hell High is one of those films. On the surface, it's a tale of high school bullying gone too far, but underneath, it's a dark character study of vengeance spiraling out of control. The story begins with a tragic incident that scars a young teacher for life. Years later, she's working at a high school when a group of unruly students decides to target her for cruel pranks. What starts as harassment escalates into something much darker, blurring the line between victim and aggressor. The more the teacher snaps, the more the movie becomes a powder keg of tension. Released at the tail end of the 80s, Hell High didn't get wide exposure, partly because audiences were already burned out on slashers. But its grit and intensity set it apart. It doesn't play like a glossy studio production. It's raw, unsettling, and at times, disturbingly real. The performances feel grounded, with the teacher's descent into madness carrying genuine weight. What makes Hell High resonate is its refusal to give you easy answers. No one here is purely innocent or purely evil. It's messy, uncomfortable, and that's the point. It's not a film you watch for cheap thrills. It's one you watch because it pushes the slasher formula into uncomfortable territory. If you're tired of cookie-cutter slashers, Hell High is the antidote. Brutal, unpredictable, and daring, it's one of the decade's most underappreciated sleepers. If you're a fan of mall horror, Chopping Mall, anyone? This is a must-see companion piece that deserves more love. And there you have it, 14 forgotten slashers from the 80s that prove the decade was far deeper than just the big names. Some are messy, some are brilliant, and all of them remind us why digging into the shadows is so rewarding. Which of these sleepers have you actually seen, and which are you adding to your list? Drop your thoughts below, hit that like, and subscribe for more hidden gems waiting in the dark.